Welcome to the MEF2C cast, a podcast dedicated to educating, supporting, and building community around MEF2C haploinsufficiency syndrome.
The MEF2C cast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. Views expressed are those of the host and guests and not necessarily of the podcast or its sponsors. This is not medical advice. Consult a healthcare professional for medical concerns.
Hey, hi, everybody. Welcome to the MEF2C cast. We are here today with Addyson Moore, who is mom to Lydia. So, Addison, can you start by just telling us a little bit about yourself, your job, a little bit about your family, as much or as little as you'd like?
Yeah, so like you said, my name's Addison. I am 28 years old and I have just one child right now in my home, Lydia. I'm in the process though of getting relicensed for foster care. For I A lot of my work has been around policy making or policy setting regarding mental health, developmental disabilities, EIDBI, which is our ABA program here in Minnesota, as well as a lot of public speaking on foster care and mental health and suicide prevention. But realistically, my full-time job is taking care of Lydia. I am really lucky that I have the ability to do that. Our family is, yeah, it's just at this point, it's just me and Lydia, but maybe someday we'll have other kiddos in the home, either for respite or long term.
That's awesome. So, can you tell us a little bit about Lydia's life and just sort of, your journey to getting her diagnosis?
Yeah, so Lydia has had a interesting life and a life that has had both some really high highs and some really low lows. She was first placed in foster care at 5 years old, and was in kinship at the time with her aunt, and then was reunified with her first mom, who we have contact with, and I have a really great relationship with. And then when she was 11, her family had to leave a domestic violence situation, and where she was living, she was constantly eloping and would cross the highway to go to Quick Trip, which is the gas station. And so she ended up spending about 30 days at one point at Cholita, which is a residential for kids with severe neurodevelopment disorders, but then was reunified back with mom. And then unfortunately, the elopement continued. And so she ended up back at Cholita due to a lack of foster homes that are willing to or able to take kids with her level of need. She ended up spending 3.5 years at Cholita, which breaks my heart because no kid should have to spend that long in a residential. But it definitely, I'm thankful that she was able to learn the skills that she did there. We found out about Lydia, her dad and I did, when we came across her video on Facebook from the Real Hope Project, which is an organization that makes videos for typically older kids who are waiting in foster care, and who are needing adoptive homes. Originally, they just started out in as a Minnesota organization, but I know now they're in states all over. And so we saw her video, and I remember from the very first time that I saw her video that I knew that that was my kid. It was just this gut feeling of like, that girl is meant to be my daughter. Unfortunately, at that moment in time, I had a 5-year old who also had profound autism was his diagnosis and a lot of needs. And so we didn't feel it was a good idea to bring another child with such significant needs into the process or into the home, just due to mine and Adam's well-being, as well as we wouldn't be able to provide everything that the kids deserve. Once we also had his little sister, but once those two went home, we were finally in a place about a year after we saw her video for our licensor to reach out to the adoption worker for Lydia. In that year, I remember spending the entire year just watching to make sure that her video was still there and that she was still needing a family, because would have been so heartbroken had we not been able to support her, just because that girl is my entire world. But we ended up once we started the match process, we first met with the social worker and were able to ask questions about her. She was able to give us some of her history, and we were actually told that she was completely healthy other than her annual well child visits and her profound autism and intellectual disability. We were told that she didn't require any specialty care besides psychiatry, and that there was really nothing medically that we were going to have to worry about. Thankfully, having been in the disability world for as long as I have been, I knew that that was probably not actually the case, but it was definitely one of those situations where that was what we were told at the beginning. And then we were asked, do you still want to move forward? Because we were also told about her behaviors and her history. And I was like, absolutely. I also, though, was it was really important to me that I built a relationship with Lydia's first family. And so before we even met Lydia or did anything else, we actually met her grandma and her aunt because it was really important that we had their blessing to adopt her, just because I think first families are so important for kids in kids who need that external care. And once we got their blessing, we ended up meeting Lydia for the first time and took her out to Pizza Hut because at that point in time, that's what she was eating. I want to say that was the beginning of, or the very end of August. And then we were figuring out her schooling because we weren't really sure how wanted to handle that when she did come home. Because she had been in a school with 50 students, our school that she would have gone to would have had 1,200. So we ended up deciding to put her in online. So I ended up going back to Cholita one day during a school day so I could observe the school. And then I think it was just a couple days after that, we brought her to the house for the very first time. And just that look, like the pictures, even now still, like she looked so happy. It looked like you can tell that she was like, is this really mine? And it was the hardest thing when we had to bring her back because you could tell that she was trying so hard not to cry. Thankfully, it was only like I want to say it was three more sleeps before we brought her home for good. But she came home September 14th of 2002 or 2022. Oh my gosh. At She was 14 at the time.
That was gonna be my next question, or how old was she when she was adopted?
Her adoption, actually, we got really lucky. Her adoption moved pretty quickly because we knew that we were all in for the adoption, and that we were going to be able to provide her everything she needed and provide her a safe home, and that we wanted to give her that permanency. And so her adoption was finalized August 9th of 23, so less than 12 months.
That's
So
incredible.
yeah, and so sorry if the whole time I've been doing the math in my head. You said she came to live with you in 22, correct?
Yeah.
So you were 25 when you
Yep.
adopted a 14-year-old? That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah.
I intentionally wanted to adopt a teenager young because I wanted it to be able to provide a child a forever home, not a home that they were gonna then have to move into a group home as in the future, especially like with Lydia having had her in residential for so long. I wanted to make sure that ideally I will outlive her so that she doesn't ever have to be without a family again.
That's so thoughtful. I think all the time, like, I need to outlive my son, and not a lot of people can, even have to think about that, let alone a 25-year-old thinking about that in such depth beforehand. That's absolutely incredible.
Thank you.
So we were talking before the show, you said she got her genetic diagnosis relatively recently?
Yeah, so we were not given any. We're actually still fighting for medical records for her from prior to her adoption, so we still don't even have a full medical history on her. But she had seen sleep medicine when she was younger, psychiatry, and I want to say those were the two of the only specialists that she had seen prior to coming to us. And so for me, it was really important that we made sure that medically everything was stable for her. And so we got set up with genetics down at Mayo Clinic, and we were able to get the whole genome sequencing approved the first time around, which is really lucky. And so we came back with a variant of unknown significance on her MEF2C gene. And so I ended up reaching out to Dr. Skinner out in one of the Carolinas and also out to Base Match, which is out of Australia, where they have like algorithms that can use or that they use kids or adults with confirmed genetic disorders and match facial features with AI. And they came back with a non diagnostic match to MEF2. So their assumption was that it was MEF2C. And then we were just recently able to get set up and have her seen at the University of Minnesota with one of the best geneticists that people travel all over the state or all over the country to see. And he sat with her, and even though it's still technically a variant of unknown significance because it was going to be so prohibitively expensive to have her bio mom and her sister and brother tested against the MEF2C or against her mutation to make sure that it was not inherited because that would make it more likely benign. But based off of like facial features, all of the other signs said that they felt that MEF2C is a likely diagnosis. The only thing that she has differently that they don't typically see is that she doesn't have as severe seizures as most kids with MEF2C.
Yeah.
But she actually, funny thing about the seizures, was not diagnosed until she was 15. And her first seizure, the first ER visit for a seizure was when she was still with her first mom at 3 years old. It is our best guess that she's been having seizures that entire time and nobody else caught it.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense because I mean, I don't know what kind of seizures she has, but the seizures can be pretty subtle sometimes.
But
I
yeah,
mean, that's something that we worry about is that Leo's having seizures and we just aren't understanding. But do you know what kind of variation she has? Do you remember?
I know she has a missense variation, so
Uh,
I think it replaces one allele with a different one. Um, and we've looked into it, that, like, it's some of the testing or some of the stuff has said it comes back as, like, not or, like, that they don't think that it's pathogenic with, like, whatever algorithms they have, but based off of symptoms, we do assume that it, like and based off of the clinical diagnostic, we are working under the assumption that it is MEF2C related neurodevelopment disorder, but I know it's a missense somewhere in her gene. I don't remember off the top of my head exactly where.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like I mean, if she has some sort of variation, she has all the symptoms, then like it's pretty safe assumption that it's pathogenic in some
Oh,
way.
yeah, exactly, and I think too, I've talked with some of her doctors as well about the fact that, like, Lydia has a lot more verbal skills than a lot of kids with MEF2C. She has the purposeful hand movement that sometimes, they don't see with the MEF2C. She obviously has the less severe seizures that it makes sense that it's harder to pinpoint it as a definitively, like, pathogenic gene, and when I talked with I think it was with one of the doctors, I think it was Dr. Cohen, he felt that it could potentially be that she has an unstable MEF2C gene, and that's why, she is able to do a lot of things that a lot of other kids with MEF2C can't.
Yeah, and it could just be I'm speculating obviously, but like,
So am I.
you know, there's the gene's huge and there's all these different possible mutations within that gene. So, there's going to be a huge spectrum of symptoms. I do know, I can't remember names off the top of my head, but I do know of one other person with MEF2C in the group I think he's like in his mid 20s. And I was talking to his dad and he can
Mhm.
speak and he has a part time job. And,
Oh, wow.
so he's more high functioning than typical. So it
Yeah,
sounds
then
like,
even Lydia, it sounds like because Lydia will never hold a job.
uh,
As much as I, like, want to have faith in her, I don't. I am realistic in the fact that the only way she could hold a job is if she has somebody working with her, standing right next to her 24/7, basically doing the job for her.
how did getting the diagnosis make you feel and how did it make Lydia feel?
Honestly, Lydia, I don't think truly understands about any of it. Her receptive language skills are so low, even compared to her expressive language skills, that I don't think she really understood any of it. She knows that she has MEF2C, and I talk about it all the time in front of her, but we don't think that she grasps it. For me, it was kind of a relief, but also a lot of frustration because that it should have been the genetic testing should have been done prior to her being 15 years old or 14. No, I think that would have been 15, but prior to her teens, because most girls with intellectual disabilities and autism have a genetic disorder and are statistically more likely to have seizures. So, like the fact that none of it was addressed prior to placement with us, I think it really just brought up a lot of frustration and anger at
Yeah, that
the
makes
adults.
sense. The other thing you have to consider too is that, like, probably right around the time she got placed with you is when kind of when genetic testing even like,
Yeah.
even 8, 9 years ago, like, getting that test for anybody would have been
Oh, yeah.
really difficult, so
Well, and even too, more so while she was in foster care really is when, because her first mom, I would have struggled to get her the testing, but as a child in foster care, I think the state needs to do a better job at addressing those types of things and getting the genetic testing. That more so it was this frustration at the state level and at the foster care level,
Mhm.
because she spent 3.5 years there and she had not seen a doctor
Right,
besides
yeah. Yeah, that
like
makes
four
sense.
times.
How did the diagnosis make you feel?
Honestly, I was pretty relieved just because it gave me an answer, and it gave me the ability to better understand her and also to connect with other families and to realize that like Lydia's not alone, and that there's so many, like, I've been able to connect with so many families and learn what has helped other kiddos and stuff. And so I think it really brought a lot of relief in that sense. I think too, when back to when her diagnosis, it was kind of like a light bulb moment because I had actually grown up with one of my best friends had Rett syndrome on the MECP2 gene, which is very closely related to the MEF2C. And so it was like, it kind of was a light bulb moment because it made a lot of sense at that point that because at that point we were still trying to figure Lydia out.
Did it, change anything as far as, like, her actual, like, medical like, treatments, therapies, anything like that? Or was it kinda just business as usual and now you just have a name for this thing?
For us, a lot of it was just business as usual because from immediately when she came into our care, I had already gotten her set up in all of the therapies. We had set her up with all of the specialists just because of the lack of medical care prior to placement, to make sure that we were covering all of our bases and that we weren't missing anything. So it really ended up kind of just being a situation where we just continued on, but we had that name and had an idea as to what to expect with her. And
That makes sense.
it also did give us the ability, like, it did let us know what areas that we hadn't thought of or that we needed to watch out for symptoms for and stuff like that.
Yeah, sure, that's huge too. Go ahead, sorry, babe.
Yeah, what kind of therapies is she in now?
So Lydia does PT for an hour twice a week, OT for an hour twice a week. She does speech therapy for 45 minutes once a week. And then she is starting music therapy in a couple of weeks. Actually, it might be next week or the week after. She also has previously, she No, I wanted to say she was previously in music therapy, and then we have done some, like, family talk therapy just due to her trauma and her history, which Lydia did not contribute much to. She just kind of was like, "Whatever," and just sat there and hung out, but the biggest ones have been, like, the PT, OT, and speech, as well as music therapy for her.
Gotcha. Can you, what does just sort of her average daily routine look like?
So Lydia does not have a routine because I have ADHD, and I also did not want her to fall into the pattern that so many kids with an autism diagnosis do, where they have to have the same routine all the time just because life is unpredictable. And so I have been very intentional on making every day a little bit different just so that I can help her be able to function in the real world. Typical day would just be like she gets up usually between anywhere from like 7 to 9 or 10. And then she has her classes and she does school online. So her school actually is amazing and made a functional or life skills level program that they can provide online for Lydia and then one of her classmates who needed that level of education. And so she does all of her classes live with teachers, and she only actually has to go to one class a day in order to be counted present for the entire day, but that doesn't even always happen. And then a lot of times we also have appointments, so we do a lot of running around. I have Lydia in dance. She's starting Miracle League in a couple weeks. She's in uh, bowling. She does She typically does soccer. We have her set up with Team Impact, so we keep her in a lot of extracurriculars as well, so those end up all the time being things, and then we do a lot of events through Hope Kids and a Kid Again, which are organizations that provide opportunities for families of kids with life-limiting or life-threatening conditions, which with the epilepsy, the doctor signed off on it, and so a lot of it's really different every day.
Can you talk a little more about I didn't catch the organizations' names, but, those events that you talked about?
Yeah, so Hope Kids, I know that they have chapters for sure in Minnesota and Colorado. I know that they have some in other states too, but it's an organization that was started to provide families opportunities to go and do things that they otherwise wouldn't be able to do. Like they rent out movie theaters so that way kids that can't necessarily sit still or kids that are immunocompromised are able to attend movies. We've done concerts, we've done hockey games, all different types of things. Lydia's favorite by far are concerts. So they are allow or so they work with families that have kids that are either have a life-threatening or life-limiting disorder. And so we were able to get her signed up for that. And a Kid Again, I know they have chapters all over too, and they provide opportunities as well. Like in Minnesota, particularly, we don't have they don't provide as many opportunities, but we do get to do Valley Fair every year and a few other events each year with them too.
That's awesome. I know I've seen other people do things like that through, like, I think the Tebow Foundation does a lot of that stuff. I've seen it in other groups too,
But
so
yeah, yeah,
anytime you can get them out and socialized, as we've talked about it before in here, anything you can do to more closely approximate a typical experience,
yeah,
generally the kids love.
100%.
How does she sort of get around? Can she walk?
Lydia does walk. She walks like a duck, so her feet stick straight out if she doesn't wear her AFOs, and her
Uh-huh.
PT took her AFOs off one day 'cause they were getting in the way with some activity they were doing, and now she refuses to put them back on. But she can walk, and we do still have a stroller for her, though, for when we go places. Like, we went through Wishes and More, which is a local Minnesota organization similar to Make-A-Wish, to Disney a few months ago, and so we use it for events like that or when we go to concerts or area or places where I worry that she's gonna throw herself on the floor and throw a fit.
Mhm.
So she does, and she definitely still falls a lot. She struggles sometimes with the changes in, like, height and stepping up
Mhm.
curbs and stuff like that, but she does actually have pretty good mobility.
Was she about that same level of mobility when she moved in with you, or is that something you guys have worked on and improved?
I would say both. There has been times where, like, it was she's at right now is where she was when she was placed with us, but then earlier or late last year and into the beginning of this year, she was dealing with a lot of medical problems and had a lot of like regression in her gait and in her walking and just in her health in general. We were having to use her stroller a lot more, but since starting back in PT, we've been able to get her to a point where she is much more mobile and does pretty well.
Do you see regression in her often? Because I know with Leo and other parents of younger children that we've talked to, that's a pretty typical thing where they'll like learn something and then it'll go away for a while and come back. And, that might happen 3 or 4 times before the thing actually sticks.
Yeah, we do see a lot of regression, especially around like food for her. That's been one of our biggest challenges with her is eating because she is so selective on what she'll eat. And then she'll just go through periods where she won't eat at all or will eat like 2 or 3 bites of food. But we've also seen it in a lot of other areas too, where it's like one day she knows something and then the next day it's like you're talking to a brick wall, even though I know she knew it the day before.
Huh.
And so there's definitely even like it's very much up and down with her for a lot of her skills.
How are you said her motor skills are better than typical?
Yeah, like she can walk. She has pretty decent fine motor skills. She cannot write like she can hold a pencil, but she you can't read what she writes. That's been one of her OT goals that we have yet to meet, and that's been on her OT goals since the day she moved in. Um, but she like is able to run. She is able to do. She was walking on time. I was able recently to get a copy of her very first IEP eval when she was 23 months old, or I think is what it was. It was either 19 or 23 months old, and she was already walking at that point. I want to say she could jump on 2 feet at that point, could get up from sitting to standing. So like since she was younger, she's had relatively decent mobility, although although it's always been delayed some. But I know a lot of other MEF2C families that have had kiddos that it takes a lot longer to be able to get that mobility and a lot more intensive, like, physical therapy and that type of stuff, which Lydia didn't get when she was younger.
Yeah, Leo is a little over 2.5, and he's just starting to, on the right day with the right motivation, he'll take some independent steps. But
Have you ever considered, like, spelling to communicate with her since
So
her
Ly
fine motor is a little bit better?
Lydia actually has an AAC and uses touch chat, and she actually can talk. Her expressive language, she can repeat any word that she wants to repeat, like, any word that anybody asks her to repeat, she can repeat it. The issue is that she just doesn't understand, like, she has no idea what she's saying, but she does have, like, an AAC device. We've used a lot of total communication, so signs, talking, and her device, but she hates using her device and would rather just talk.
see, well, actually, we've got an episode coming out on spelling to communicate. But and I don't obviously your daughter best, but what that woman explained to us is, the apraxia we typically think of as just body stuff, but it's also their ability to say words and putting their ability to speak in gross motor through their arm and their hand, as opposed to the fine motor of an AAC or trying to speak, can sometimes be beneficial.
Yeah, and she can spell, she navigates an iPad independently. She can spell, like, the word museum when I ask her, has no problem, like, and can read just about any word. We have found that the issue really is, like, the comprehension of things, and like, for her, I was actually just talking to her, speech therapist about this today because I had her neuropsych pulled up, and, like, her, expressive language is at for adaptive expressive language is at, like, 1 year and, like, 5 months, but her receptive is, like, barely at 1 year. So it's more so that she doesn't understand what's being said versus
I
not
see.
being able to say it,
Gotcha.
which is not typical of, like, most kids with autism.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. And yeah.
I
Sorry.
actually have a really funny story about it. One time her ABA worker told me that I needed to watch what I say in front of Lydia, and Lydia had been with us for a year and a half at that point. I knew her very well. And she's like, because I think Lydia, or her reasoning was that Lydia knows more and understands more than you give her credit for. So they had her read a passage. She read the passage completely, and it was about a bird looking for a bird bath. We asked her or the ABA or BCBA asked her what was the bird looking for, and Lydia looks at her and goes chirp chirp. So like the understanding just isn't there for her.
Yeah.
S- That like I talk in front of her all the time, which has its positives and negatives because now she has learned some not so appropriate words.
Yeah. We talk about that all the time. Leo's gonna say all kinds of strange things because
Lydia's favorite thing to call me right now is an a-hole.
what is her sleep like? You mentioned earlier before we started recording that she has trouble with her sleep.
So Lydia, if we did not medicate her, she would not sleep. She can go days without sleep. When she came to us, she was on 100 of trazodone, but being she was living in a residential, it really didn't matter that she didn't sleep very well because there were already awake adults. So when she moved in with us, we had to increase her sleeping meds because everybody in the house needed to be able to function. And so now she is on like 4 different sleeping meds, and there are still nights and it's enough to knock out an elephant, and there are still nights it takes her 3+ hours to fall asleep. She typically once she falls asleep, she'll stay asleep pretty well, but we know that brain-wise, we don't wanna keep her on all of the sleep meds, so we were able to just now get her last month, we were able to get her a sleep-safe bed so that we can start weaning her off of some of her sleeping meds so that she can just hang out in there, so that way we're not hindering some of her development by having her on so many meds.
Right, and you said she's taken to the sleep safe bed really well, correct?
Oh, yeah, she loves that bed. She asks iPad bed all the time, and we did not think she would like it. Like, I was really convinced that it was gonna take her a really long time, like, if not years, to get to a point where we could put both sides all the way up. The very first night, we had one side all the way up, the other side was half up, and then by the second night, we had both sides all the way up, and now she won't sleep any other way.
What kind of sleep safe bed is it?
We did the sleep safe tall. So, because we weren't sure how she would handle, like, the top part, and I wanted something that was more solid versus the nets because that girl can destroy things. So we ended up going with the sleep safe tall, and then we were able to thankfully get a queen size approved for her, thinking that mom was gonna have to help her transition into it, but now it's just full of stuffed animals and fiber optic lights.
Can you talk a little bit more about her school? You mentioned like life skills lessons. Like
Yeah.
what does school actually look like for her?
So she is in a online public charter school, and so for her, we're able to come up with an entire. They've developed an entire program, and there's 3 or 4 kids like in the core program, and so her classes are like functional math. Science is a lot of like videos on like songs about science. Same with her like social studies. It's a lot of music and stuff like that. It's all teacher led, so all of her classes are live, which makes my life a lot easier. And then we're able to still access all of the like PTOT through through school, although she doesn't do DAPE because when she very first moved in and started school, she decided she did not like the DAPE teacher, and so we just have never put it back in there because she's so active in other sports. But it's a lot of essentially like what kids would be doing with the kids who have significant developmental disabilities would be doing in a school setting, in-person school setting, but she's able to do it at home. And then I'm usually just sitting with her, reminding her and yelling at her that she needs to pay attention and answer her questions or telling her to shush because she won't stop making noises.
Can you talk a little bit more about the extracurricular activities that she's in?
Yeah, so Lydia does top soccer, which is an adaptive soccer program for kids who have or individuals with intellectual disabilities. She does Miracle League, which is a baseball program. She is in an adaptive dance class, so she'll have her dance recital actually in a couple days. She does in the summertime, she'll do day camp for really just for the social interaction of it. And then we had attempted gymnastics. She was not a fan of that and just threw herself on the floor, but that was also right when she moved in. But I have always, and then she's done bowling. She does bowling through Special Olympics. I've always been where, like, for me, my expectation of her is that she goes to her sport. She doesn't have to participate. And if she doesn't want to, but she is going to be there until the very end of practice or class or the game. Um, and then whether she participates or not is up to her, but usually after about 30 seconds of sitting down and watching, she's participating.
That's incredible. I love that.
What does participating well, let's start here. Which one's her favorite?
I would say probably dance. That one she's also probably made the most progress in. Um,
Uh-huh.
and it's really cool actually because her dance teacher used to be my dance teacher. And so I am in her, like, I'm not actually in the dance class, but I am dancing with her in the recital and have to have a costume and everything. And I'm the only parent that has to do it, which kind of sucks. But so like, it's a lot of me directing her and telling her how to do it. And so most of the time, I would say dance is probably her favorite. And then after that, I would say probably soccer, but I'm not really sure. It depends on the day.
So what does let's take soccer for an example. What does participation in that look like for her?
She stands on the field and has a buddy that runs with her, and everything just goes so far over her head that she has no idea what she's doing.
Gotcha.
But at least she's out on the field doing something.
Right, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. What, if any, therapies, devices, anything like that stand out as have been the most helpful for her?
So being in Minnesota, we are really, really lucky with our waiver system that we have here. So we've been able to get her a chill out chair, which she does love sitting in because that girl can rock 24/7. We're in the process and just waiting on a full size ball pit that it'll be similar to the one that she has at therapy. She has a trampoline she uses. We were able to get a bike for her or like the Riften tricycle We actually took it out for the first time this year yesterday, and she was in heaven. She has like fiber optic lights, she has weighted blankets, basically like any type of sensory stuff we've
Mhm.
either gotten and attempted to use or she uses it all the time.
Gotcha. Yeah, I kind of skipped over that part, but are there any particular sensory inputs that she likes especially well?
Banging her head and hitting her head on mom's head.
Okay, gotcha. Leo seems to like I mean, I think it's just kind of a boy thing because I like whacking myself in the head with things sometimes too, but Leo will just, we'll call it bonk, and we'll just sit there and bonk, 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 and knock our heads off each other, and then he'll do it to her, and she'll be like, "But
It hurts me, but it doesn't hurt them. Lydia is the exact same height as me, and we are in within a couple pounds of each other. So so she's very, very strong. So whenever she's upset, she'll grab me on both sides of my head and then like pull her head and hit it as hard as she can. She's given me at least one concussion that we know of.
oh, yeah."
But headbanging is by far her favorite thing because anytime she doesn't get what she wants, she'll either use her fist to hit her head or she'll throw herself on the floor and bang her head. And she has another gene mutation that actually can is increase it it's a collagen disorder, so it increases her risk of stroke. So we have to be extremely like mindful and she has a helmet, but she refuses to wear it. And so it's not the healthiest one, but I'm like, at this point, there's only so much I can do.
Gotcha. If are there have there been any ways you've been able to incorporate that in a relatively constructive like, give her opportunities to have that sensory input in a safe way?
Yeah, we do a lot of head squeezes. So she'll like grab our hands and versus her grabbing our head, she grabs our hands and then puts them up to her head and then asks us to squeeze. We've also done like a lot of times she'll wear a hat or some other like weighted something on her head. And that seems to give a similar input. She used to wear noise canceling headphones all the time. Like we had to have a pair. And when she was at Cholita, she had one on 24/7. But now she doesn't use those very often. I think a lot of it was just the noise that was actually done and stuff, but it also gave that sense that head input that she liked. And then we found that like she will sit there. She has this owl that her sister gave her, and she spins it and slams it into her head face when she's going to bed. And so like, and she doesn't do that hard enough to hurt herself. So we do let her do it that so that she can still get those inputs without it being unsafe.
Sure. You mentioned her sister, so she has other siblings that are with different families then?
Yep. So she has a younger sister who was adopted by their first cousin.
Mhm.
And then she has a younger brother who was adopted by a third family who is we all live within about 2 hours of each other. And so we do try to get the kids together, but it's not as often as I would like.
Yeah. Are they typical?
Lucy is Charlie has really mild cerebral palsy and was diagnosed with level 1 autism. And then he also has, a few other medical things that I am not 100% sure on, but he definitely is not Lydia level, um, n special needs.
You mentioned she really likes concerts. Is she it seems like a lot of MCHS kids are really fond of music. Is that true with Lydia?
Yes, that kid always has music going, and in her perfect world, she would have the music on her iPad, the music on her TV, and her making her noises and singing.
Mhm. Yep.
And actually, when she was younger, most of her communication when she first got to Cholita was just through song and singing. Girl, music is like her entire life. She really likes to, she actually has been banished from the front seat because she will sit there and change music in the car because she wants certain songs. So now she just sits in the back and is like, I want taco song or, what are the other ones? I want fancy or, um, the pancake song. And the pancake song is not allowed to play in my car anymore. But so she very much prefers music and like has never been to a concert that she doesn't like. And so we try to go to one at least once every other month, if not one or two a month. And been really lucky to be able to go to so many different venues. And there's so many the music scene in Minnesota is really nice. And so we're able to take her to a lot of different venues and they're so accommodating of her. So it's really, really fun.
Does she wear noise canceling headphones to the concerts, or like do you have to accommodate her sensory needs at all at those
Nope.
shows?
That
Really?
girl, if I tried to put noise canceling headphones on her at a concert, she would be so mad and would throw them off. So we do put her in her stroller, but that's more so just so that other people aren't bumping into her, and then also too, it makes it so that we're able to sit in like a separate section off or separate area that's sectioned off. So it just makes it a little bit easier on her. But beyond like that part of it, no. She would be very mad if mom tried to interrupt her music or her sensory input there.
So obviously, I know you're in the Facebook group. I'd imagine most of the people listening know about the Facebook group. If you don't, MEF2C parents chat on Facebook. If you're just finding this somehow without the group, get in that group immediately because it's an incredible community um, for people who are parents of people with MCHS. But other than that, you mentioned foundations that put on events, things like that. How else, if at all, have you built sort of a community and a support network around you and around Lydia?
So I am really lucky because I have for years and years, even before Lydia, was very active in the mental health world, the trauma world, the autism world. And so a lot of it was just kind of supports that we already had. We a lot of them have come from Cope Kids and A Kid Again and those organizations, and as well as Special Olympics and then sports. And I would say a lot of our community comes from those places, as well as just having a lot of family and stuff. And then beyond that, it's really kind of just been that, like, our general disability group in Minnesota, a lot of the parents I know and either was friends with their kids, who are now adults or and have disabilities, or some parents that have kids that are younger than Lydia. So really, it's just kind of been a lot of networking and a lot of Facebook. That's really the only reason I use Facebook. A lot of it has just really been various different Facebook groups, whether that's like our local ones or through the COL4A2, which is her other mutation or Gold syndrome, her other stuff through that group. And then also a lot of it's been through the foster care and adoption community as well.
Well, that's great. It sounds like you have all kinds of different communities that you're a part of.
Do you have any type of respite care, maybe through the waiver or anything like
Yeah,
that?
so I have a really hard time letting Lydia go to respite because she is functionally nonverbal. She could not tell us if something went on that wasn't okay, nor could she protect herself. And there is suspicion that something probably happened when she was younger, just based off of situations at the hospital that we've found and so or have witnessed. And so she hasn't done respite yet, but she will be going to Crescent Cove, which is a respite here in Minnesota that has like nurses and is specifically for kids who have life limiting disorders. It's also a hospice, and then she'll do day camp at another organization called True Friends. They do overnight camps, they do day camps, they do like specialty camps, so a whole bunch of like those services. And then Lydia does have a lot of like we have a lot of PCA hours that we get for her if I need a break. And then she'll goes to her dad's house either every other weekend or every weekend whenever he asks. I let him or I'm like, I don't care, you can have her. Since I'm home with her full time and all week long. So I do get some respite from through those, but I really struggle to let her go anywhere else.
Yeah, I can definitely imagine how that would be difficult, because I know that, again, we were talking before, I have 3 siblings that were all adopted, and I know some of the experiences they had in respite care and in foster care, and they were typical kids who can't speak and defend themselves, so I can imagine it would only be worse with,
Yeah,
someone with
and
with
having grown
Lydia's
up in a
needs.
family where there was a lot of abuse and my biological dad, who isn't my dad anymore, is in prison for abuse, that it just, like, is one of those things that I really, really struggle letting her do.
Of
Yeah,
course.
sure. What has your experience been like navigating getting the necessary resources for Lydia? So that could be with, I mean, it would primarily be with, I would imagine, the government and kind of her waiver and healthcare and things like that.
It's for us, we've been really lucky because even before Lydia, I actually wrote CDCS, which are consumer directed community support plans for waivers. So I've been dealing with waivers for almost 10 years now. So I knew how to navigate them before she came to us even. So I have thankfully have not had a lot of the troubles that a lot of other families face in regards to that aspect of it. Our county, like, we've had a few frustrations and disagreements with our county and just denial of stuff that I know can be approved on a waiver because it had previously been approved in another county. So we get some issues like that, but overall, like, her waiver, we don't struggle as much with. Our bigger issue has been around like medical care and just a lot of like some of the doctors just not taking me seriously, or that being like, this isn't actually an issue, or you're seeing like you're reporting things that aren't there when lo and behold, it ends up coming back that yes, they are there. So that's like been our bigger issue, has been around the hospital systems and the doctors and stuff like that.
Gotcha. Have you developed any strategies to be able to navigate those situations any better? Or
We have thankfully now developed or got have built a really, really good team of providers for Lydia who are all ones that have been able to listen, that all are able to work together, although they're at a few different health systems, but that just, I think for us, really finding the right providers for her was our biggest thing, and realizing like that I can't take personally what they're saying when they're like, "No, you're crazy, there's nothing going on there," and that it is still important to advocate for Lydia, and I think that, like, just reframing that mindset has been a lot of what's helped.
yeah, I mean, it's important to advocate with doctors. And also, to your point, if your doctors aren't taking you seriously, it's important to find somebody else. I mean, we've got really lucky. The only thing we've really had to switch with Leo is ophthalmology. But even then, like, our first ophthalmologist said that he was farsighted and he wanted us, or
Other way around.
he was nearsighted and he wanted us to do like patching to try to strengthen his eye because he has strabismus. And
Mm,
then Haley was like, well, I don't,
I didn't like his answers.
yeah, she didn't like, and we go to another ophthalmologist and he says, no, actually, he's nearsighted and
Farsighted.
farsighted, whatever, the opposite. And patching is like the exact opposite of what you need to be doing. And when we switched, his eyes improved. So, we talked about this in another interview. Doctors are just people. I mean, obviously they've been to medical training and you should take their advice seriously, but at the same time, they're not like some infallible oracle, you know what I mean? Like
yeah. Oh,
spouting knowledge.
exactly.
So,
Yeah.
um, I think it's important to remind the audience of that. So,
Yeah. And do you think maybe that your, I want to say, lack of age difference has, made a difference in the doctor's eyes, you think?
Absolutely that, and being that I have my own medical issues, that, they have, I think those 2 factors are probably 2 of the biggest factors that have affected the relationship with some of her doctors and have led to a lot of the issues that we've had, and so it is really hard because, like, even there was one time I brought her, and we had another foster kiddo at the same time, to an adoption medicine appointment, and I got one of whoever's appointment it was checked in, and then the receptionist asks, "Is your mom or is do you guys have a parent with you?" And so, like, it does definitely impact her care in some ways, and but oftentimes once the providers are able to realize that I know what I'm talking about, I know what I'm doing, then they end up
mm,
changing their tune.
Yeah, you sound super knowledgeable, so you'd think as soon as they start talking to you, they'd completely understand.
Yeah.
what do you think have been the most difficult parts about being Lydia's mom?
I think the most difficult part is living with the fact that she spent a year longer in foster care than she needed to, or in residential than she needed to, as well as the fact that I can't take the trauma and the her passed away, nor can I take the pain and the struggles that she has and just make life easier for her, would probably be the hardest parts of being her parent. And then just kind of the frustration around doctors and have like the other external stuff. Like, Lydia is my ride or die, and she's my 100%, like, anytime I leave, "Mom? "Mom, mom." Although she's finally getting to a point where when I drop her off at her dad, she goes, "Mom, bye." And when I asked for a hug when he was bringing her back over on Sunday, she goes, "No, dad hug." And so she's starting to develop some independence and teenage attitude, but overall, like, she's such an easy kid and, like, is so just go with the flow and so sweet that I real there's it's really just those external factors of her life that make it hard,
Yeah,
and the
that
fact that
seems
there's constant noise in the house.
yeah, yeah, that seems to be obviously, I don't wanna experiences vary, and I don't wanna make it seem like every person with MCHS is just, like, super chill and easygoing, but that does seem to be a common theme with the people we talk to is that the kids' disposition themselves is usually, like, super cheerful and really charming and easygoing and just a joy to be around.
Without a doubt, and, like, for us,
Uh,
uh, um we're even especially lucky because with her history and her early childhood experiences and the fact that she was in foster care and residential as long as she was, we should have dealt with we would should be seeing so many more behaviors and so many more challenges that we're really lucky we don't see because she just is so chill and so positive and just happy and everybody falls in love with her. Like she has everybody in the
what do
world
you
wrapped around
think
her finger.
hmm,
Isn't that how it usually goes? I say it all the time, like, it's Leo's world. We're just living in it.
My thing is this is Lydia's house. I just live in it
Yeah.
and clean it and everything else, but this house is hers.
Yep.
what do you think have been the biggest positives about being Lydia's mom?
I would say the biggest positives are just the love that I get to have for her and the knowledge of knowing that she is forever gonna have a family, that she's never going to be in the situation again that she was in prior to placement with us, and she that I just get to love her and give her everything that I want to give her and that she deserves.
That's awesome. What advice would you give to a parent who's just got their diagnosis?
I think my biggest advice would be that you know your child best, and sometimes it as hard as it is and as frustrating as it is, it's really important to find or to advocate for them. And then also just looking into and being a part of the special needs community and the MEF2C community are so important as well, just because that way you don't have to feel so alone all the time.
Yeah, I agree. And we talked about it before, but the Facebook group is just great for, you know, community and just
Yeah, I mean, I check that literally at least twice a day, specifically just to go and look and see what the kids are doing.
Yeah, I'm probably on there more than I read anything else on Facebook.
Right, exactly.
what are your hopes for Lydia's future?
My hopes for Lydia's future are that she is able to be happy, that she will forever know that she is loved, and that she gets to live a life that is meaningful to her, no matter like what that looks like. Because there's realistically, I don't think she'll ever hold down a job. I don't think she'll contribute to the world the same way that somebody without an intellectual disability would, or the same way like society would expect somebody to. But it's for me, my biggest hope is that she's able to live a life that's worth living for her and is something that it can be a life that she enjoys while still being able to make a difference within the world.
What, if any, hopes do you have for the MCHS community as a whole for the future?
I would say I think my biggest hopes for community is really just more understanding of the different variants, being able to figure out because I know Lydia's not the only one with the VUS, being able to figure out some more of those aspects of it as well as just the learning pieces, but also to being able to make sure that and look into and provide the kids or the individuals with things that will improve their life and allow them to have the healthiest life possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think all that stuff's coming. It's just going to take a little bit of time.
Absolutely, yep.
Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to share with the listeners?
Uh, I don't think so.
Okay. Alrighty. Well, we really appreciate all your time. Do you have any Final thoughts, dear?
I don't think so.
Okay. So, as usual, if anyone in the audience wants to contact us, they can do so on our Facebook group or at our email, MEF2CAST@gmail.com. And thanks everybody so much for listening. Thanks, Addison.
Yeah, thank you for having me.